Great, thanks very much. Good day, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm glad to be here. And as we heard, we're going to be looking at Boris Continuum Complete 8 AVX today. How to create beautiful light effects to really give your final product that extra sheen. Now, first though, a note about what's new in BCC 8 AVX. I come to the effects palette here in Media Composer 6, and I can start looking through my categories here. Those of you familiar with Boris Continuum Complete will probably see that there has been some reorganization of the categories here. The whole object behind this is to really make it easier for you to find the specific type of effect that you're looking for. So you're going to enjoy that. You're also going to enjoy the fact that many of the filters that you're used to have additional functionality built in now, allowing you to take your effects work even further. And then on top of that, there are a number of brand new filters, many of which we're going to be looking at today. For example, if I go to the lights category here, we have BCC Lens Flare 3D. This is just fantastic. This supersedes Lens Flare and Lens Flare Advanced, takes all of the goodness of both of those previous effects and adds a whole bunch more functionality in terms of 3D style effects. Now, if you still have legacy effects, don't worry, and obsolete, you'll still find Lens Flare and Lens Flare Advanced, but as you will see today, Lens Flare 3D is really the tool that you're going to want to use going forward. Also brand new is Stage Light. We're going to be looking at that today as well. And then in film style, we have Film Glow. That's another new addition that we'll be looking at today. And then under color and tone, right at the bottom there, there's a video scope. Again, we'll explore that. And then also under image restoration, there's a new filter called Flicker Fixer. So lots of new stuff for you to play with there. And of course, on top of that, BCC 8, of course, is 64-bit compliant. So I'm running Media Composer 6 here with BCC 8. And also BCC 8 incorporates Beat Reactor now as well, meaning that most of your effect parameters can be driven by your soundtrack. So let's dive right in and start out with Lens Flare 3D. So I'm going to go to my lights here. I'm going to take Lens Flare 3D and I'm going to drag Lens Flare 3D down onto this clip here. This is a nighttime time-lapse image of some traffic going past. So if I take Lens Flare 3D, drag it, drop it onto this clip, what I'm going to get is a lens flare covering the shot there like so. So I've got a glow, I've got rays, and I've got all of these different artifacts which are independently manipulable. So into effects mode, and what I'm actually going to do here with this shot is I want to show you, first of all of the different elements that comprise Lens Flare 3D. And I also want to show you how I can actually switch off the built-in light source and have the effect generated by the luminance values, the light areas in my image as it stands. So let's go and do that right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the effect, and I'm actually going to start to switch off elements of this effect so that you can see more clearly how it's made up. So I'm going to switch off the chromatic aberration, the star caustic, the elliptical caustic, and as I'm doing this, you should see these disappearing from the right-hand side. I switch off the chroma fan there. Here's the chroma hoop. Let's switch that off. You can see the stripe here, that's the horizontal bar, so I'm going to switch the stripe off as well, and I'm basically peeling this back until I've just got the bare bones of the effect. As I say, I'm doing that mainly to show you guys all of the different characteristics that you can, of course, come in and switch on independently and keyframe, but basically what I wanted to do is get back to the point where I've only got flare and rays on, okay, in my effect. So now I've just got the flare and the rays on. What I'd like to do is change the light source from built-in to luminance channel, like so. Now I'm going to come in and switch off brightness and size and choose the map layer to be the filter, the layer itself. Now you can see that I've switched off the built-in light source, and now the light is being generated by cues in the shot itself. Now, I might want to go ahead and back off on the intensity somewhat. I might want to back off on the scale, like so. And of course, there are many other attributes that I can animate here, but I might just go ahead and sort of mix with the original a little bit, like so. And so, very quickly, I'm able to generate an effect based on, as I say, the luminance in the scene itself. So I might actually just go take the scale back up a little bit there so we can see what's going on. Now, as I move through the scene now, I've gone ahead and added this effect motivated by the light, and you can see that in fact there's a point here where a guy walks through the scene, and again, just because of the fact he doesn't have any luminance information, he's not going to interrupt what we've got going on in the background there. In fact, as you can see, the lights even wrap around him a little bit, which is quite sweet. Okay, so that's using Lens Flare 3D, but channeling it through the luminance information available in my shot. What about a different example? Well, here I've got a shot of a marina, and the shot's pretty nice, but it's fairly flat, you know, and I want to add sun. I want to add some sunlight to this particular shot to really sell it. So in this particular case, we'll add the Lens Flare 3D, and we'll accept the way that it turns up with all of its artifacts and its glow and its rays, and in fact we'll go in and we'll boost the intensity of this shot very slightly. And here we go, let's take the intensity up, so now we can really see the artifacts and the sun. Now I'm going to reposition it like so, up here towards the top of the right-hand portion of the screen. Now that's very good, and I could be happy with that. The only problem here, though, of course, is that this is a moving shot. The shot is actually panning to the right, and otherwise, if I don't motion track this light, it's going to appear to sort of float there sort of rather awkwardly. So let's go to the motion tracker down at the bottom of Lens Flare 3D. Underneath Motion Tracker, you've got Track on the Fly, which is going to switch off your effect and switch on your tracker box. Let's, in fact, zoom in there a little bit so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to position my tracker box, and then I'm just going to hit play. And that's the beautiful thing about using the Motion Tracker in BCC 8, is if I just go ahead and I switch on Track on the Fly, position my track box, all I have to do then is hit play in the Media Composer interface, and that track data is going to be generated automatically. Okay, so we can see that that's tracking on the horizon there between the hill and the sky, and so we've got our tracker data. So that's pretty good. The only thing is that the tracker data has yet to be applied to the object. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to come down here and switch off Track on the Fly so we get our object back, our light object. And now underneath the tracking parameters, I'm going to switch Apply from None to Light Source. Now the light source is going to be moving with the track data. Obviously it's offset the light source, so let's go ahead and just use our offset controls here to put the light source back at the point of interest where we wanted it to be in the first place. Okay, so there it is. So now as I move through the scene, the light source is indeed tracking with the shot, and so it's selling it. We have that believability of those artifacts shifting in the lens as the camera moves, and so that's really augmented that particular shot. Now, these Lens Flare 3D effects can also be applied as transitions, and in this particular case I'm actually going to take the Lens Flare 3D effect itself and add a transition onto this effect. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come to the global intensity parameter here, right-click, add keyframe. I'm going to go to the end of the effect, right-click, add keyframe, and now I'm going to increase the intensity of the sun until we've pretty much blown out almost all of the detail in the scene, like so. And I might even right-click and choose spline. So now you can see that apart from the track of the sun on the shot, we've also now been able to generate an inbuilt transition effect through into white that will take us into the next shot. Okay, so what is the next shot? Well, the next shot, also in the marina, we've got a different vessel this time. Now let's say I wanted to get sort of fancy here, and I wanted to recreate that outgoing effect as the incoming effect on this particular shot here. How would I do that? Well, in my particular case, since I've already gone ahead and done so much work on this Lens Flare 3D, what I'd like to do is go and copy this Lens Flare 3D to the neighboring shot, like so. So now I'm in the neighboring shot, and of course the problem for me will be that the transition is at the end of the shot. So how do I change that? No problem. Come here to the global intensity inside the keyframe editor, right-click and choose reverse keyframes. Now we actually have the effect coming in at the beginning of our shot and coming through to reveal the next shot. Okay, so that's a quick technique for playing around and keeping the position of the sun and what have you. I might take the intensity down on the sun just a little bit here on this shot, just because that's how I'd like it to be aesthetically. So we've got the transition. Let's not forget, though, that in the previous version of this shot we tracked it, right? So let's go down and actually let's unapply the track data, because we don't need to be using that on this shot since this is a stationary shot. Okay, so now what's going to happen is that I've got the ability to come in and actually specify what's called an obscuration layer. So as I come in from my effect here, what I'd like to do is actually have the guy on the boat here obscure the light source as he goes in front of it. As he moves in front of the light source, like so, I don't want the sun on top of him. I want it to be behind him. So how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? Well, we're in Lens Flare 3D. It's a brand new effect, and here I have obscuration map layer. This is just fantastic. Watch this. I'm going to switch it from none to filter layer, and immediately the sun is going to disappear. And if I back up now and get back to a portion of the shot where the sun is still over his shoulder, there it is, and if I play forwards now, you can see that the effect automatically is going to obscure that the sunlight there on the basis of the luminance map that's been read for this particular image. Okay, and that's just being read from the pixel data. There's no special matte layer or anything like that. So that's just fantastic. We're able to get realistic effects where the light will go in and out between leaves or in and out between aspects of the scene and really allow us to produce a very believable result without having to go and do a huge amount of keyframing to produce that effect. So Lens Flare 3D, as you can see, is really going to give you a lot more capabilities to enhance your work. Let's look at a different example. Here I've got a background plate, okay, of the seaside here, or the shoreline, and over top of that I've got a second layer. In this particular case, it's Boris Effects title created using title tool or marquee inside of Media Composer. Now, what I'm about to show you could also be done using a matte key, something that's imported with an alpha channel. And so this is what I'm going to do. Here's a different version of the Boris Effects logo that I did import as a matte key. And so what I want to show you is how I can use the title effect itself to obscure and reveal the Lens Flare 3D. So I'm actually over top of my background, but underneath the title layer, like so. So how do I do that with a title or a matte key, something that I've imported with an alpha channel? Well, the way I do it is this. I'm going to take my Lens Flare 3D and I'm going to drag and drop it directly on my title or my Mac key. Now, normally in Media Composer, we would hold down Alt or Option to auto-nest this effect on the title or the Mac key. I'm going to tell you that that's not how you want to deal with this particular effect. You want to just drag and drop it on top like so, okay? And then go into Effects mode. Now, once you're in Effects mode, what you can do now is you can go ahead and go to the title mat control, okay? And in the title mat control, say Apply to Title Mat. Now you've brought the lens flare back together with the graphic over top of the background. So that's all you have to do there is apply to title mat, okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is obviously all of these effects come with a huge bank of presets. So I could do something as simple as just switch on the faded ring by itself. If I come down to Z disc, I could just create a little disc. I've got all sorts of presets and parameters I can play with that I can switch on and adjust. Now, the other thing I can do as well is I can actually use Previous and Next here to just cycle through some of the presets and actually visually inspect them. So there's my Stargate Amber that I used in my other example there, so I'm going to use it on this one. And you've got the stripe here is vertical. I'm not liking that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the stripe controls here, and I'm going to highlight the angle, and I'm actually just going to set it to 90 degrees like so. Okay? That's very good. Now I'm going to reposition the effect so it sort of starts out here as a sort of a sunrise, and I'm also going to go and the very top layer of my effect parameters, I'm going to right-click and say Add Start and End Keyframes. And that's because basically at the end of the shot, I'm going to highlight the end keyframe now. I want the lens flare to have moved through the title up to this position here, shall we say. Okay? Now, that has given me a little animation across the title itself, but as you can see, the title is still over top. The lens flare is still over top of the title. So let's go back to that magic obscuration layer that we used before. And this time, let's set it to filter layer. There we go. And notice that we're actually still getting a bit of a stripe, even though it's obscured. We're getting a little bit of light still spilling around the edges. If you want to be more conservative, then go to obscuration type and flip it from RGB to RGB and alpha. Now you're going to get a much more conservative interpretation of that edge, and there we go. Now we get a reveal, and then we'll get a very crisp obscuration as it goes through the S like so. So this is just a fantastic effect for beefing up not just a scene where you want to add sunlight, but also anything that you want to do with light passes or lens flares or interacting with titles. It's just a really versatile effect, and you're going to really enjoy playing around with this, I can tell you. A couple of other examples I don't have time to build right now, but I want to show you. Here's using the obscuration layer again. The original shot, if you'll bear with me, I'll just go right-click and match frame that up into my viewer. The original shot does have sun in it, look, but the sun's peeking in and out through the branches. So what I did is I took a dark area that sometimes gets obscured by the brightness, and I made that the point that I'm monitoring for the obscuration layer. Meaning that as the sun goes away, notice how the chroma fan disappears, and then as the sun comes back, it becomes more intense again. Okay. Different example here. I actually added some sunlight to this scene where the sun wasn't really apparent. And what I did is I used the obscuration layer. Watch what happens when this guy moves in front of the sun there. He just basically obscures it like so. And then this example here, all I did here was nothing much. I just added some extra little artifacts to the sun. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to put a push in on this particular shot, and nothing sells that more than just a little bit of a shift in the artifacts around the sun there as I push in. You see that? getting a little bit of animation, and that again sells the shot, makes us feel as the audience like that artifact was created in the lens at that particular point in time. So there's Lens Flare 3D, really, really wonderful stuff. And before I move on to the next category of effects, I want to show you one other thing, and that is video scope. So down here under color and tone at the very bottom you have video scope. I'm going to drag it and drop it onto a spare track over the top of all of my clips here, like so. And so now you can see straight away we have the ability to monitor our effects on screen. And what I can do through effects mode is I can go in and I can choose my color space. I'm going to switch here from SD to HD 709. I've also got the ability to resize and reposition and all of these boxes here. And then under broadcast safe, I've got the ability to switch between log only, render only, and render and log. And under broadcast safe as well, I can also specify my luma upper threshold. Maybe I'll set that to 95. Maybe I'll set the chroma upper threshold to 95 as well, and the luma lower threshold to 5. Having done that now, when I move across the shots, you'll see that this is fine. There are no alarms on this shot. But if I hit a shot where I'm getting alarms, this little red dot here, and that's going to tell me that obviously that's something I need to pay attention to. In addition, if I do find something that I want to pay attention to and I want to be very accurate about it, I can actually go through, play the frames of that shot back, and by virtue here in the broadcast safe area of the open log file, I can generate a text file which is both time-stamped and frame-stamped to tell me where I've got some issues in my shot. So that's very, very handy indeed. And particularly handy when we're doing lighting effects, because of course in lighting effects we're going to be piling on the amount of light and chrominance information in our shot, and so being able to keep track of it with these tools, very handy indeed. And of course, as I say, we can of course customize the tools to have different displays depending upon what exactly we're interested in monitoring for that particular pass. So great stuff there with the video scope. So moving along, the next thing that we're going to look at is Film Glow. And here I've got a couple of examples I've already done. Let's just go and match frame these so you can see start and end points. So here's my start video, and here's my end Film Glow example. You can see that I'm just getting a nice softness with a degree more punch to the shot, I would say, more separation between the layers. Let's look at this example here. This one's really nice. This little flower. And here in the original version, you can see that there's a very crisp video edge to the flower petals here. But in the Film Glow version, I've got this beautiful luminance behind here, but I've also got this very beautiful soft edge that is giving me a hint of 3D. It's really popping the flower forward in the shot as compared to this here. So hopefully you can see that at home via the webcast, the difference between these two shots. Some other examples here, I've got a whole graffiti scene, and some of these shots look a little flat like this one, but once again, adding the Film Glow really changes the characteristics of this whole sequence and really makes all the artwork pop that little bit more. So how do we do this? How do we use Film Glow? Well, actually, my first example today is not as a segment-based effect, but actually as a transition effect. I'm going to transition from this shot to this shot using Film Glow. So I've marked an area in my timeline here in the filler that represents the transition area that I'm interested in. I'm going to come to Film Style, I'm going to come to Film Glow, I'm going to drag and drop that on there. And in this particular case, all I really want to do is create a very simple animation. So in effects mode, I'm going to find the center of my transition point here, and I'm going to add a keyframe for global intensity, and then I'm just going to ramp it up until I lose almost all of the detail in the shot. I'm just going to leave a little bit in there. Now I'm going to right click and say add start and end keyframes. They become auto highlighted, and so now I can take those down to 0. Let's just reframe this graph slightly, change the interpolation to spline, and now you can see that as I play through, I've got a beautiful transition. The image just gets eaten away there based on the luminance, and we transition through and beautifully reveal the next shot. So that's using Film Glow as a transition technique. What about using it as a glow on an entire shot? Well, here I've got a sunset shot that I might want to add some more mood to, and I've also got a pier shot in the morning that I might want to add some more mood to. So let's look at a couple of those examples. First off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get the Film Glow, drag and drop it on top of this clip here. Go into effects mode, and I'm going to affect the threshold. Now, obviously, the Boris effects make these effects default to show you a very gratuitous example of what could happen if you use this effect. So you're pretty much always going to want to go to the threshold immediately upon entering the effect and decide how much of the effect you want to bring in based upon the luminance and chroma values in your shot. So in this case, I'm going to set my threshold about 50 or so. That's quite nice. Now, the glow intensity, obviously, I could have a very intense glow. I could have a reasonable glow. I'm actually going to set this around about 60 or so for this particular shot. The glow radius, well, if I bring that all the way up, I'm just going to create a fog. And if I bring it all the way down to 0, I'm going to confine the glow to some very specific areas in my shot. So let's go position this around about 20 or so, and that's going to give me, this is basically the bypass, there's the original, and this is where we've gotten to. So I'm quite liking that already. What I'd like to do next, though, is actually go and add film process. Here's film process in the film style category, and I am going to auto nest this on top this time. So I alt drag it on top, and now I've got film process over the top. And in this case, I'm going to go to the film process presets, and I'm going to choose color push, and now it's going to push those colors through. Now that's maybe a little much, so we'll go to post-process here, and we'll do a bit of a mix with the original. If I pop back now to source record mode, I match frame this, you can really see that maybe it took me 2 minutes, and I've really affected the mood, the feel of this shot. I've created something that's worthy of my final shot in my sequence, for example, compared to the rather flat example that we started off with. Okay? Now, let's go to the next example and look at doing something slightly different here. Again, I'm going to start off with Film Glow. So let's drag and drop that on there. Again, I'm going to want to go straight to effects mode and play with my threshold until I'm happy with the amount. And obviously I can play with the threshold amounts using the on-screen controls as well. I just happen to be a slider guy. That's how I like to do my stuff. So now I've set my threshold. That's good. Check my intensity. Check my radius. And now what I'm going to do, here's what I've added so far. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add over the top from the lights category raise puffy. So there we go. I'm going to auto nest this over the top of this particular effect. Now in actual fact I want it underneath, so I'm going to take raise puffy and drag it and drop it underneath the Film Glow for a slightly different version of this combination. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go to the apply mode. See, the apply mode is basically telling us, okay, well, how is this effect being added to the image? Is it an overlay? Is it a screen? Is it a difference? So there's many transfer layers that I can choose from. I want to choose soft light because I'm going for a realistic effect here. Now I'm going to go to the pixel chooser itself, switch on the pixel chooser, and what this allows me to do is set a matte based on the luminance channel in my image. Now I can manipulate the luminance channel matte by increasing or decreasing the softness, the blur. I can choke the matte. I can invert the matte if I need to. And the result is the following. I mean, look at this. We've got a beautiful morning glow on this shot now. And in fact, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pop myself back into source record mode for a moment. I'm going to bring this up as a comparison, go to full screen mode, and just show you. There's the original shot, okay, and there's my new version of the shot. And what I'd like you to notice is that there are parts of the shot that remain virtually unaffected, okay, whereas there are other parts of the shot where we've really built up that light effect. And so that's what's really giving me the ability to go in and just play with the light and affect the light in the scene and leave the rest of the elements in the scene alone. So just tremendous stuff. What about if you're a broadcaster or someone who works in sports? Could you use Film Glow to brighten up your work as well? Absolutely. Absolutely. First thing I'm going to do here, though, is you hopefully are noticing that this is a rather flat-looking shot at the moment. So I'm going to go into color correction mode, and I'm going to simply just ask color correction mode to give me an auto contrast. And now you can see, hopefully, that the luminance range has been increased. I've got blacker blacks and whiter whites. The reason I did that is, obviously, if I am applying an effect, BCC light effect, that is going to use that luminance information, the better the luminance information is represented, the better the result of the effect that I'm going to get. So make sure that you go and do a color correction pass first, because that's going to really help you get the best out of these effects. Now, all I have to do is go get my Film Glow. So let's go back to Film Style, the Film Glow. Obviously, we're going to have to nest this on top of the color correction itself. Maybe change the threshold slightly. And once I've got a look that I like, that could be it. I might be completely done. And that took me 30 seconds perhaps to color correct and then add the Film Glow onto this shot. And boy, oh boy, the difference is quite dramatic, isn't it? Really picks that shot up and makes it feel like a special moment. So what if we wanted to just take that a little bit further, take this exact effect and take it a little bit further, add some different attributes to it? Well, let's do that. I'm going to actually use Beat Reactor. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take the Film Glow here that's applied to this version of the basketball player, and I've got the same clip just after it here, like so, but with some music underneath it. So what I'd like to do is use that music to drive the effect. So back in effects mode, I'm going to take the previous version of the effect, drag it, and auto-nest it over top of this color correction here. Now I'm going to go into this effect and manipulate the parameters. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the intensity and I'm just going to blow it out like so. Give me a really radical look. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the glow radius and I'm going to blow out the glow radius slightly as well, like so. I'm going to take my X width, increase that, Y width, I'm going to remove it. And so you can see now that courtesy of those manipulations, I've got this kind of smearing through the image, which is what I'm looking for. So I really like that. That's the effect that I'm going for. But now the Beat Reactor. What do we do with that? Well, you can see that I've got this drum track underneath the clip. And so the trick to this is you're going to want to just select that little slice of audio and export it as an external file. Because when I come down here and I choose to switch on the Beat Reactor, right? If I enable the Beat Reactor, the first thing that it's going to say to me is, hey, where's that external file that you want me to be reading? And so I'm going to click on External File, browse to that location, open it up, and now those parameters are available, or rather the audio information is available to the effect. There's one other thing we need to do first, though, and that is to come to the parameter and switch it from unused to, in this case, I want it to affect glow intensity. And I could even come in here and I could affect the way that the glow intensity falls off over time. For example, I could choose the output minimum and I could set that maybe to 20, and I could choose the output maximum and maybe set that to 300. And now as I move through the effect, you're going to see that the beat of that track is driving the intensity of those rays like so, okay? And obviously I have this like on-screen graph display here. If I want to, I can go and actually bring the opacity of that down completely. Let me just show you here under Film Glow. I have a completed version of that shot that's been rendered, and so this is what we get. Let's just play that once more. So we're able to get in there and actually use the characteristics of our audio to help us drive the effect forward. So that's great stuff there. So we've been playing around here with Film Glow. What else do we want to look at today? Well, I've got some glint examples that I'd like to work with right now. I've got a beach shot, and I've got this bauble dropping and smashing on the ground there. So I'm going to start using glint. And so I'm going to return to my lights category. I'm going to choose the glint effect. I'm going to drag and drop the glint effect over top. And instantly, of course, I see, right, that's what this effect is going to do to my shot. So where am I going to head? Where am I going to go? I'm going to go initially to threshold, right? Because that's what's going to allow us to choose how much of the effect is being applied, or rather, how much value from the image itself I'm going to use to generate the effect. So let's say I want to get to a point where just the ocean primarily has some glints in it. Maybe there are a few other glints, but primarily the ocean. So that's me setting my threshold at about 70% there. Now, I'm going to take the glint brightness itself. I'm going to take that down a bit just to make it a little bit more believable. The glint scale, and of course I can go ahead and change the glint aspect rate, the scale aspect, the glint angle, all of that kind of good stuff, like so. So once I've got a look that I'm interested in, the next thing I'm going to do with this particular shot is I'm going to go to the pixel chooser. Here's the pixel chooser. I'm going to switch it on. And earlier on, when I was doing Film Glow, I used the pixel chooser to set the matte to look at the luminance channel in my image. In this case, I'm actually going to use the pixel chooser to define a shape. You can see I can create custom shapes, ovals, rectangles. In this case, I'm going to set it to inside rectangle, so you can see that only the areas in the image which are covered by the rectangle, which are bounded by the rectangle, are going to have the effect. So I'm just going to sort of isolate the effect over the ocean there, like so. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a little bit of film style. I'm going to go to Film Glow and nest Film Glow over the top of this too. Obviously, I need to play with my threshold until I get it to a point where I'm happy, like so maybe, somewhere around there. Let's just look at the bypass before, after. So that's just kind of smoothing that out a little bit. And of course, I could also play with the order of these effects here if that gives me a more pleasing result. If we go back to the original, now you can see that I've been able to generate a much more pleasing shot. It feels happier. It's got the sparkle that's going to help me sell that vacation or whatever it is that I'm doing for my client. So just a simple example of using glint with some of those tools that are built in. Let's look at a different example here. I'm going to go back to lights. I'm going to go get the glint again, drag it, drop it on. And in this particular case, I really want to make it as subtle as possible. So I'm going to use the threshold. I'm going to really bring the threshold up here to remove as much of the effect as possible, just letting it really sneak in on the brightest portions of my image. Now I'm going to go and get Film Glow again. I'm going to bring that, add that on top. Again, manipulate the threshold here until I've got a result that I like, something like so. And let's pop back, because I really want to show you this in tandem with its original. So match frame the track, lock them together, and now let's step through this. And you can just see, look, wow, the amount of detail, the amount of keyframing that this would take to do if I weren't using BCC lighting effects. Look at all of those glints in there, the film glow. It's really taking that shot to the next level, and you can just imagine how much time it would take if you had to go in and keyframe all of this stuff by hand. I'm essentially setting up the effect and just letting it go, letting the values in the shot drive the animation, if you like. Okay. Here's another example, one that I've already built. I'm not going to rebuild this one, but just to show you, there's the original shot. I came in, I color corrected, I added a nice subtle glint here, I added film glow, and I got to tell you, the film glow also adds just this sort of huge viscosity to the surface. It becomes really thick and treacly and gives me this really pleasing look, just glinting off the surface of the ocean there. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So, so that's glint. What are we going to look at next? Well, I want to look at rays next, and I've got a good example for you here. Here I've got Notre Dame, a shot from the inside of Notre Dame Cathedral, and we've got those huge great windows there, letting light into this quite darkened interior. Okay, and what I'd like to do for you today is actually show you a number of examples of using different ray techniques to show you what's going on. So we're going to start out with this guy, and the first example I'm going to show you is creating this effect using rays streaking. The next example I'm going to show you is using rays puffing. Then I'm going to show you another example with gradient edges, and finally another example with rays textured. And I'm actually going to use a little bit of beat matching in there as well. So, beat reactor in there as well. So to do this, let's come along. Let's take our first shot here, and I'm going to go to lighting, and I'm going to go to rays streaky. Okay, so drag and drop that on there. That's the default effect. Off into effects mode, and the first thing I want to do here is you can see that the underneath custom look there's color, and at the moment it says colorize. What I'd like to do is switch this to image, and so rather than colorizing the image, I'm going to use the values in the image itself, which is going to give me a much more naturalistic look. Now I'm going to boost the intensity way up here, like so, and I'm going to boost up the ray length as well. And you can see that as I do that, these are very, very delineated rays. So I'm actually going to take the ray style and change it to fat, like so. So I get a much more, a smoother version of those rays in my image. Okay, now I'm starting to lose detail in the rest of my image here because the effect is taking over. So I want to rebalance the effect against the interior of the room, and the way that I do that is I'm going to essentially going to set the apply mode. Remember earlier we set the apply mode. I'm going to set the apply mode in this particular case not to soft light but to screen. Okay, and that helps me bring the rest of the room back into the shot. And look what's going on. If I bypass for a second here, not only are we augmenting the light coming in, streaming in through those windows, but notice that we're also getting this volumetric lighting effect. It really is that the light bouncing around in the room is getting affected by this effect as well. Okay, so we're really selling this because we're able to actually affect not just the primary light source, but all of those those reflections in the room as well. Once I've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to come and do a little keyframe. I'm going to add start and end keyframes, and I'm going to reposition the light slightly in Y on the Y-axis, essentially. And all I'm doing this for is to give myself just a little bit of movement on the light source so that you guys can see, oh yeah, look, so that's how the light source is interacting with the scene. As I move through the scene and as the light source changes, we're getting a nice subtle movement on these rays here. And so that's the effect that we're trying to generate there with rays streaking. Okay, let's go to a different example. Rays puffy. Let's drag and drop that onto this shot. There's the default version. And here, in this effect, I've actually got a texture control. Okay, so what this is going to allow me to do is to go in and manipulate the way that the texture comes across in this particular shot. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is switch on texture, and I've got strings, contracted strings, shimmer, shimmer and strings, and I'm going to switch on shimmer and contracted strings, and you can see now that really pops these shimmering shafts of light out from the window like so. Now underneath there, what I'm going to do for the texture is I'm going to just increase the string morph rate slightly, like so, and I'm also going to increase the shimmer morph rate as well, like so. And then I'm going to go to my light source group, and I'm going to do exactly what I just did previously. In other words, I'm going to come in, I'm going to add start and end keyframes, and just apply exactly the same movement to the light, so you can see this compared fairly accurately to the previous example. So now as I move through, you're going to actually see these rays moving and processing as the light source moves itself. So that's rays puffy. Now let's go to our next example and apply radiant edges. There we go. That's the default for the effect. So let's go in and affect how this looks. I'm actually going to take the light source intensity here and ramp that right up like so. I'm also going to increase the ray length slightly like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my color again, and I'm going to choose image to base it upon the image rather than a colorized effect. And then apply mode, let's use our friend screen again to bring the room back. Okay, open up the light source group again like I did before, and I'm just going to put that little animation back on to this so we can see how this version of the effect has come out for us. Minus 158 like so. So now as I scrub through, you can see we've got yet another version of light streaming in through these windows here, and I've got these shafts of light which are moving as the light source moves. So once again, a really cool effect. Final example in this series would be for me to use rays textured. Okay, so rays textured, going to bring that on. I'm actually going to do something a little different with this one this time. First of all, I'm going to take the texture amount. I'm actually going to take the texture amount down. I'm going to take the texture scale down slightly as well. The ray length, I think that's going to come down just a little bit as well. There we go. I like that. I'm also going to change the style from detailed to fat. That's going to smooth that out there. And then, again, we just want to create that little animation. So we'll do that, start and end keyframes, minus 58, and highlight that keyframe, minus 158. So we've done the same thing again. We've created our little animation going on, and you can see the glimmering of those rays around the windows there. Okay. So that's all good, but the next thing I want to do is actually use this with Beat Reactor. I just want to show you that you can do the same thing again with Beat Reactor. So I would have exported this portion of my sequence audio, and so that when I come to Beat Reactor, I can then go straight away and choose External File, browse to that file, and bring it in. Okay. Now what I want to do is, again, what parameter do I want the beat to drive? So in this particular case, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say I'd like you to drive ray length, and then underneath the ray length itself, I'd like you to have a minimum maybe of 40, so that's going to make the minimum more noticeable, and a maximum maybe of 85, so we don't overblow the effect there. Now, as I said before, you've got this graph that you can use as part of the effect if you like, or you can switch it off by just making it opaque. And now, as I step through, again, the intensity of the rays is being driven by the length of the rays is being driven by the beat. So there we have it. Those are our 4 examples that we were able to come up with using different lighting rays. And in fact, if I go back into full screen mode for a second here, and I bring up this particular shot, you can see me moving through these, and you can see the rays animating on each of these shots as I move forward. Some of them are more subtle than others, but we can really create a wide variety of different effects using rays. And here's another example. This is interesting. This is just a little shot. I stuck my GoPro camera on the dashboard, and I'm driving down the road at night, and sadly I missed the sunset. So let's say I wanted to create that sunset shot like I did here. How did I do that? Well, initially, obviously, I went in, I did a little bit of color correction, and I added rays puffy over the top of the shot. I positioned it where the sunset would be to give it motivation in the scene, and as you can see, I've got little sparkles and rays coming out from where the sun would be. And then what I did is, over top of that, I added a Lens Flare 3D, tracked that onto the scene, and hey presto, I got a really convincing closing shot for my little piece there, much more compelling than this particular shot. So just wanted to give you a different example there. So to conclude, the last thing that I want to take you through today is using BCC Stage Light. So here we go. Here's an example I've already worked on, and you can see here we've got our rock star on the stage, we've got our stage lights, we've got our fog, and the question is, how do we get to this shot from this beginning? Here is the original shot, no smoke, no lights. How do we get there using BCC 8? Well, I'm going to show you. Let's go back to lights, and right down at the bottom here we have stage light. Drag and drop that onto your effect, your shot like so. Now don't worry that you're not seeing the shot right now. What we need to do is to go in and actually switch on this layer so that the light knows to not be pointing at the background, but in fact be pointing to the layer itself. Now we've brought the light and the image back together in the same frame. Great. So now what I can do is I can come down here to my light. I've got a master intensity control, but I've also got an intensity control just for this particular light. So I'm just going to increase the intensity slightly. I'm going to move it over to the top left-hand corner of my image. I'm going to change the color. I can either choose a color picker, or I can use sliders to define a custom color if I want to. And then, by virtue of the fact that this is a spotlight, I can start to play with the interest angle. So I can play with the Z angle, I can play with the Y angle, and I can play with the X angle. I can also, by the way, change the render mode. At the moment I'm on natural, but I could go from weak through linear to natural to strong, like so. And so what I might do here is I might play also with the cone angle. I might increase the cone angle slightly, increase the cone feather, and then I could go back and play perhaps with my Z position a little bit until I get exactly the kind of result that I'm looking for, and it might be something along those lines like that. Okay? Now I could come in and I can switch on my second completely independent light source. This guy I'm going to turn to green, I think, like so. And in this particular case, I'm going to turn it from a spotlight into a point light, like so. Reposition it in the scene, pop it up in the top right-hand corner, like so. Wow, I'm going to really have to boost the intensity of this particular light now to make it feel like something's happening. There we go. That's great. Now, what's going to really sell this shot, once we've added the lights, is going to be the smoke. When I add the smoke in, you can see here that I've got smoke added in. I can play with the density of the smoke if I want to that's being caught by the lights. I can change the speed. And the speed's important because, again, I'm not going to have to animate this. The speed is going to determine the movement of the smoke through. And so now, basically, as I step through the scene, you're going to get smoke, you're going to get lights. And in fact, if I step back for a moment to the completed version, sorry, let me go to Stage Lights and to Completed. There you go. That's what it's going to look like once it's rendered out. So it's just a really fantastic effect. Absolutely love it. And my final example today here, I have a time-lapse shot of a lake, beautiful time-lapse shot. And what I'd like to do is show you something rather sneaky that I'm going to do with Stage Light. I'm going to add my Stage Light on. And again, I need to go into effects mode and make sure I tell the Stage Light, hey, you want to be filtering the layer itself to bring the lights together. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take the light and recreate the moon, okay? So I'm going to take the intensity perhaps down a little bit. Now at the moment it's still a spotlight, so the way I'm going to get around that is I'm actually going to take the Z position, and at the moment it's at the screen plane at 0, but I'm going to take the Z position and I'm going to push it back by 0.5, which has pushed the moon back in the scene and rotated the cone towards the viewer, okay? And then all I'm going to do is go ahead and position my X and Y. I've already played with this effect a little bit, so I do know approximately in the image where I'd like my moon to be, right about there. And that's nice, that's working. The only thing, of course, is that we really need a reflection since we're in front of a lake here. So let's go switch on a second light source. Let's take the intensity of this light source down even further because it is the reflection after all. Let's do the same thing with the Z position. Push it back by 0.5, and then X and Y, all we've got to do is line it back up again like so, and push it down into the water like that. And so now we've been able to get in there and create our moon over the water shot. Okay, so let's just recap for a second. We've gone through a lot of stuff today, but just to remind you, we saw Lens Flare 3D, we saw Film Glow, we saw BCC Glint, we saw BCC Rays, and BCC Stage Light. I really hope this has been useful to you and that we've communicated some good techniques, shown you some of the goodness in this new version of BCC 8. And I'll turn it back over to the folks at Boris. Thank you very much for your time.